Welcome back to Hardball. Rick Santorum, the Republican candidate who didn't have his 15 minutes of fame like most of the GOP field has had before flaming out, might be having his moment right now. And the way Santorum cleverly frames the race, he's in a contest with Perry and Bachmann for what he calls the conservative vote. Could Santorum be the sleeper in this race? Plus, a former Ron Paul staffer says, if you believe him, that Paul believes Israel shouldn't exist and that the United States had no business getting involved fighting Hitler in World War II. Well, needless to say, the Paul campaign says he's a disgruntled former staffer who was fired. Well, Aaron McPike is covering the GOP 2012 race for Real Clear Politics, and Steve Kornacki is political columnist at Salon. Thank you both, Aaron, and thank you, Steve. Let's go to this interesting case of Rick Santorum. I've always believed that when you're in a crunch, Aaron, and you don't know what you're doing, you go back to basics. If you're a religious conservative, don't get your fingers dirty in this campaign. Don't hold your nose. Vote for somebody whose values you completely buy into, and you'll always be proud of your vote, even if you don't pick a president. Is that what's working for Santorum, if anything is?
Well, he thinks that it is, right? But his poll numbers haven't budged all that much. He's starting to be tied with Bachmann and Perry. But his two ads, the only two ads he has out in Iowa, are about him and social values and his record on social issues. And that's all he's talking about. But what is his economic message? This is an economic election, and that's not what he's talking about. So it's going to be really hard for him to win Iowa when everyone else is talking about the economy. Well, in his most recent ad, as you say, Rick Santorum makes sure Iowa voters know he's the choice for Christian evangelicals. Let's watch. Well, besides being a great family man, and that he is, Rick Santorum is also a politician, believe it or not. And he breaks down the Iowa race in a way that makes him look pretty good. He says there's 3 separate contests going on, and he says there's just one primary that he's interested in winning, which is conveniently the one where he can win. Let's listen.
There's really 3 primaries going on here. There's the Libertarian primary, which Ron Paul is going to win, and then you got the moderate primary, which Gingrich and Romney are scrumming for, and you got 3 folks who are running as strong conservatives. And you know, I think if we win that primary, we're in very good shape as the non-Newt Romney.
Well, the 3 people running as strong conservatives that he's talking about are himself, Rick Perry, and Michelle Bachmann. Real Clear Politics lays out the state of play in this conservative primary. Santorum wants to win. Since December 1st, after his dismal debate performance had already dropped him out of the lead, Rick Perry in the blue line has been on a steady climb. See it? From 6% up to 12%, doubling. Michelle Bachmann's trend line, however, which is black, has been fairly flat throughout December, landing at 8.7% today. And Rick Santorum there in the orange line, who's been to all 99 Iowa counties so far, has also been rising steadily. He started at 4. He's modestly up to about or almost 8. Let me go to Steve Kornacki on this from Salon. It seems to me that he does have a shot at winning this very narrowly defined intramural match with the other 2 cultural conservatives, Perry and Bachmann.
He has a chance of winning it, but the question is, does he win it in a way that makes him a player beyond Iowa?
Well, can he get in 3rd place?
Well, yeah, I mean, now there's 3rd place where, you know, he beats them out with 13% of the vote, and Romney wins the state with 27, and I don't think that's really worthwhile. You know, but then there's the question of if you can add together Bachmann, Perry, Santorum, and a little bit of Newt, because Newt is getting some of the conservative vote too. You put those all together, you're at the 35% that Mike Huckabee managed to get in 2008. Right. That's when turnout, you know, 60% of the Iowa electorate in 2008 was evangelical Christians, and they were crazy about Mike Huckabee. The problem evangelical Christians have had in Iowa this time is they haven't found that one candidate.
Well, isn't that what Santorum's hoping to do? Grab the lion's share of the Huckabee vote from last time.
But you look at the competition he's got. You know, Michelle Bachmann with the homeschooling, with her Christian credentials.
Is she a homeschooler too?
With all of the money.
Are they all homeschoolers out there?
I think 2 of the 3 of them are.
This is a very, you know, let me tell Aaron, I've been following Republican politics for a long time, and I've never seen that you've got a party so culturally conservative. You've got a fight going on over who's the true homeschooler. I mean, this is getting back to basics here.
Well, that's what Mike Huckabee did in 2008, right? And that worked for him. Michelle Bachmann has been pushing that message for a long time, and it worked for her over the summer, but then suddenly her support dissipated. Yeah. So, you know, Rick Perry's not really talking to the homeschoolers, though, but he's talking about his values and going to church and, you know, his own faith and how he came to God in his 20s. Yeah, so they're all going for the religious aspect here. But
okay, let's take a look at this other interesting case. We got all the news today. Ron Paul. Ron Paul may win this whole thing. I don't know. It's really up in the air. If Ron Paul wins, it'll be because people ignore some of this stuff about him. Now, this stuff's coming out from his former staffer, who's been described by his loyal staffers as disgruntled, as being fired. They do all the things to take the truth out of the guy, right? Now, the question is, he says things like, Ron Paul doesn't just have problems with Israeli foreign policy or the right-wing government in place over there now. He, according to the former staffer, doesn't believe in the state of Israel, believes the Arabs should get that land. That's pretty strong stuff, even for libertarians. Your thought on that, Steve?
Yeah, no, I mean, this represents fundamentally what Ron Paul's problem is in the Republican Party. This is a hawkish party, especially with regards to the Middle East, especially with regards to Israel and Iran. And the parallel that I keep thinking about with Ron Paul is Pat Buchanan, because the last guy on the Republican side who really kind of broke through in the presidential primaries and had the non-interventionist Middle East foreign policy was Buchanan. And I interviewed Buchanan last week about the parallel, and he said he sees it. He says he sees it happening with Ron Paul, what happened to him in 19...
Pat has never come out to remove the state of Israel from the map.
No, but he was, of all the Republicans, I can't think of one who was more hostile to Pat than Pat Buchanan to Israel on the national stage. And what Buchanan said was, look, in 96, I nearly won Iowa, I won New Hampshire, and the party, more than anything else, because of non-interventionism, was terrified, and they went to war with me in South Carolina.
My thinking is if Ron Paul wins, Aaron, the message on the national media afterwards will be small government conservatism wins around in Iowa, even though it may not matter nationwide. The people out there are so much against government, they're willing to go with a guy as libertarian as Barry Gold would ever hope to be.
Well, right, but it's Ron Paul's legions of supporters that we're talking about right now. You don't really often meet undecided voters in Iowa who are considering Ron Paul. So it's a really... we don't know how he's going to do in New Hampshire yet or South Carolina. He's really been focusing here. So I don't know that we can take that away from him.
Describe them, Aaron. What kind of people do you see when you meet who are Ron Paul? Are they young college libertarians like we were, Ayn Rand supporters, people that really believe in individualism?
They are. You meet a lot of college kids who are always coming out to his events time and time again. But I'll tell you this, Chris. We get the nastiest hate mail from Ron Paul supporters than I've ever gotten before for anything you could possibly write. They're very dedicated. They will always comment. And if there's something that they think that you're doing wrong in your coverage of Ron Paul, they will let you know.
But the other side of it is, let me go back to my formulation. You both can bash it down. It's equal opportunity here. I think when you're in a turmoil of a lot of tainted candidates, I mean, Romney's a bit of a big government guy, let's face it. He was national health care writ large in Massachusetts. Certainly Newt has been all over the map with big government formulations and climate change. So you look for something clean. You can go in that voting booth and vote for somebody you truly believe in, like Ron Paul, an absolute libertarian, or Rick Santorum, an absolute Christian conservative, and you can walk out and say, don't blame me.
Yeah.
Is there some of that out there, or am I just imagining that?
No, and we've seen that before on the Republican side. I mean, in the Iowa caucuses, the most famous story was Pat Robertson in 1988 beating a sitting vice president, George Bush Sr., because that conservative Christian base couldn't stomach the old Yankee Republican Bush, and they'd sooner vote for Pat Robertson, who's like national approval rating was like 10%. Deal. Buchanan nearly won it in 96. Buchanan won New Hampshire. I think at the end of the day, the party sort of elites take control of this process, and they get their guy through. But that doesn't mean these early states are going to be clean.
So it could clearly be an anti-establishment response out there to all this.
Particularly in a state like Iowa, I would think.
Your view, Aaron, could the anti-establishment candidates like Santorum and Ron Paul be the stars on election night or caucus night?
Maybe so, but here's the other thing. Neither Ron Paul nor Rick Santorum really truly want to be president. I've talked to both of these guys, and they both have said, Rick Santorum told me a year and a half ago he was only going to run because he wanted to move the field to the right. And I asked Ron Paul a couple weeks ago if he actually wanted to be president, and he kind of just said, sure. These guys are both message candidates. They're trying to
got this on tape,
influence
Aaron?
the debate in the way they
Aaron,
want.
this is news. I've not heard this before. Admissions by candidates they don't want to win.
Not in so many words, but that's what they're saying. They're wanting to move the field to the right, and also, Ron Paul has the message that very clearly. And when I asked him, he just said, sure, And I asked him, well, why do you want to be president? And he just said, well, the answer should be obvious. It's a silly question. And he said that a couple of times. But, Chris,
you might
remember
be
in
onto
1979,
something.
Ted Kennedy couldn't answer.
What's your hunch tell you, by the way? This could be newsmaking. Do you think Ron Paul, based on those kind of flippant answers, of almost like fatalistic answers, that he may be planning for a third party if he doesn't come out of this thing on top, which he probably won't?
Yeah, he very well may. He almost owes it to his supporters who have been there for him for so long to have that message go through the general election. He very well might.
What do you think of that, Steve?
Well, I think that the thing with Ron Paul is he himself is leaving politics at the end of this year, so you'd say maybe he has nothing to lose.
He's not running in a primary for the House again.
But if he cares about his son's political future in the Republican Party, the senator from Kentucky, he's got to be very careful if he's the guy who cost him the White House in 2012.
Hostage to fate.
It's
anyway,
a tough call.
thank you, Aaron. It's great having you on. Please come back soon. Thank you, Steve, as always. Steve Kornacki up next.